Are you guys seeing this? A screw just came out from the cork of the shuttle. Let's take a deeper look. The badminton shuttle is such an underrated consumable that we rely heavily on having a good game of badminton. This is the third time I'm trying to film something like this, and as every time I find something new, more questions pop up. And it feels like the more I know, the less I know at this stage. But I'm going to take you along to what I've learned so far, and I think you will like this video. I've also gone through 20 different shuttles from multiple models and brands, and we're going to take a closer look at the construction of this incredible thing, especially around the cork base area. That area is fascinating. However, this video would not be possible without RSL's help. RSL is one of the biggest shuttle manufacturers in the world, and a true expert there gave me a lot of his time in explaining many of the questions that I've had alongside providing necessary context and background information. I was told that RSL currently produces around 1 to 1.2 million tubes of shuttles a month, which is almost 15 million shuttles a month. So they know the production of a badminton shuttlecock really well. So a big thank you to them, and watch out for an upcoming video where I put their shuttles through their paces via a structured testing regime before comparing their performance. In very simple terms, a badminton shuttlecock, birdie, shuttle or ball, however you want to call it, weighs around 5 grams and has 16 feathers. It generally consists of only 4 components and 6 materials. The 4 components are split into feather, the cork, the string and the glue. The cork base is then further divided into the leather outside of the cork and the tape around it, which helps us easily identify the shuttle during flight. Let's start with the cork at the top of the shuttle, or bottom, however you're holding it, of course. Previously, I've cut open a few shuttles and I knew certain manufacturers did multi-layered cork bases for shuttles. So this time I thought I would get serious and hook up a jigsaw and slice them all open, because the last time I used a Stanley knife and pen knife and that didn't go too well. However, a few shuttles in, I had a big surprise when my jigsaw jumped whilst cutting through the cork, and I didn't realize it at first because it was so loud, but I picked up a screw off the floor and I was like, what? But as I was filming the cutting process, I rolled back the footage and I saw this screw came out of the Chow Pie purple shuttle. And I've never known screws were placed into corks to make sure that they have the right weight, so this was a new finding. However, the other 19 shuttles I've cut up did not have any screws in the cork bases. But I did have one shuttle that didn't even have the cork. It was the super low end shuttle from the 361 brand, which was part of my recent Temu equipment video. If you're interested, I'll leave the video link in the description below. The super low end shuttle didn't even have a natural cork base, and it was all foam, which explained why the shuttle felt spongy and erratic, as once the foam deforms, it doesn't bounce back and regains its shape. If you cut one of your shuttles open and it's foam, that's not a good sign. However, once I've gone through all the cutting, I very quickly realized manufacturers use different techniques and materials in production, depending on the price point of the shuttle, of course. Almost all brands have some form of multi-layered cork base design. Higher end shuttles tend to have 2 layers of cork bases, and 3-layer cork bases are also present in premium and standard range shuttles. Additionally, what was interesting is to how manufacturers employ different cork base designs to produce excellent shuttles all around in the market. Here I'm showing some of the best shuttles on the planet, and this is the Yonex AS50 shuttles as well as the F90 tournament shuttles, which are used at the Olympics, World Championships, Japan Open and All England. And here is the Victor Master Ace, Victor's highest end premium shuttle. This one is Li Ning's G800. Briefly, these are RSL's high-end options, the 20 Classic and number 1 shuttles. All of these shown here are BWF certified high-end premium shuttles. You can see that the Yonex shuttles here employ a 2-layer cork base design where a small piece of natural cork is very close to the head of the cork base. Whilst in Victor and Leaning's shuttles, the Victor Master Ace have a 50-50 split cork design, whilst the Leaning has the opposite configuration to the Yonex shuttles. The RSLs have a different design where a layer of natural cork, which is closer to the head, is made from finely crushed natural cork before they are compressed and glued together, whilst the top layer is a type of synthetic cork. So very different manufacturing designs and processes there. So why use natural cork? It's all down to the ability to absorb and transfer the energy that's coming from our rackets and strings and be able to bounce back into shape after their impact. The cork's signature feeling is quite key to how a shuttle feels, as our strings tend to contact the head of the cork first. So that's why shuttles have natural cork around the head area. Natural cork in bigger pieces also costs more money too, and hence they're generally found in more premium shuttles. Additionally, natural cork is an organic material, hence it will naturally have holes and gaps as is part of a tree. As shuttle manufacturers try and engineer very precise shuttles with very fine tolerances, it gets challenging to have big pieces of cork cut to specific specifications, as it's a natural product. Hence, RSL's design allow them to accurately and finely control their cork base's specification and production processes. Both methods have pros and cons, but what is fantastic is that manufacturers use different methods to solve this design challenge. Also, synthetic corks are generally softer than natural corks, hence they're often found in the middle or upper layer of a shuttle's cork base, where the feather stems are inserted. Here are some shuttles with 3-layer cork base designs like Yelex's here, which is a popular brand in the UK. The Yelex shuttles I'm testing here are from the top 3 grades available. We'll call them yellow, orange and purple because of their sticker color. We can see here that natural cork is present on the head of the cork base, whilst the middle layer is a synthetic cork, and the small layer at the very top is synthetic or natural cork depending on the grade of the shuttle. The downside of having multi-layered cork bases is sometimes you'll see there are bulges around the cork area where the glue connecting the cork layers have worn out, and a layer of either synthetic or natural cork has swelled, causing that ring which we see around the leather on the cork side. I've also noticed that higher end shuttles tend to have their feather stems inserted at a deeper level, around 13 to 15 millimeters, whilst less premium ones go up to 12 millimeters deep. In summary, plenty of configurations exist for a shuttle's cork-based design, depending on the brand and which model you play with. Generally, the more premium a shuttle is, the bigger the single piece of natural cork inside it. Crushed natural corks are actually quite a smart solution to ensure quality control during production is consistent. The Chow Pai shuttles that I've got here is about 10 years old, and I think inserting screws into them is a pretty old method of ensuring the shuttle makes the required weight. Here we have a deeper look into the cork-based structure and materials of it under an optical microscope as well as a scanning electron microscope. It's pretty interesting. And talking about shuttles, you will need badminton rackets to play with them, and so remember to protect your precious badminton rackets from chips and scratches with the premium racket protection tape with free delivery worldwide on ckydw.com/shop. We also have some super limited edition player sign prints too. If we then look at the feather of a shuttle, many of us know that badminton feather shuttlecocks uses 2 types of feathers, goose and duck. As far as I'm aware, duck feathers are commonly referred to as the less premium feather when compared to goose feathers. However, we must also remember that there are levels to this, and it's important to note if we compare high-end goose feathers to high-end duck feathers, the goose feather will probably be better, but the margins are very close. But Mid-range goose feathers will actually lose out to high-end duck feathers. And as a matter of fact, I personally am not able to tell if a shuttle is made from goose feathers or duck feathers just from visual inspection. But I've recently been pleasantly surprised to find out some of the shuttles that I've rated very highly are actually duck feather shuttles. Very interesting there. Generally in Europe, shuttles tend to be on the higher end spectrum due to the buying power and also the expectation of quality. Hence, many of the 20 shuttles I've sliced up here today are considered pretty high end shuttles. You can also see that there are different feather types, some with fuller shapes, others less. Modern shuttlecock factories are highly automated and manufacturers buy feathers in bulk from farmers. However, sourcing them is a huge challenge to ensure quality and consistency in production. Brands generally separate their feathers into categories such as left wing, right wing, colors, whiteness, angle of the feathers, bird type, etc. My shuttle expert tells me RSL's factories are sorting the raw feathers they get from farmers into 50,000 different feather categories, depending on the parameters they need. 50,000, guys. I had to double check. He said 50,000. Yup, and that's only possible because of the sheer amount of shuttles they process each month. 1.2 million tubes of shuttles is 14.4 million shuttles, which requires over 230 million pieces of feathers a month. These 230 million feathers have passed quality control and are used for production. Imagine the raw numbers. You get the idea. So 50,000 different types of feather configurations is probably correct for the quantity of feathers passing through their production floor. In high-end shuttles, only feathers from the same exact spec, like the same wing, same feather, size, shape, angle, etc. are combined together before they are punched into the cork. I was also told that in earlier days, manufacturers tended to bleach their feathers so they look cleaner and brighter white. However, I'm aware that brands such as RSL don't bleach their feathers anymore because they believe it damages the feathers. So the only bleaching comes from their natural drying process when they lay their feathers out to dry in the sun after the washing. From the shuttles I've sliced up here, many of them are used shuttles, but if we look at some of the newer ones which are sliced up, we can actually see many of them are punched out to perfection and the stem is crisp and stiff, but the tips with the feathers are pliable and is able to store lots of energy before flicking back when released. Higher end shuttles tend to have full feathers and lower end shuttles have partial feathers with various degrees of slight damage as we go down the quality chain. If we zoom in on them on the microscope, we can actually see some incredible detail here, even down to the individual strands of little hairs on each of the feather. When we use a different type of microscope, a scanning electron microscope, we're actually able to zoom in individually on the feathers, and at just 100 times magnification, we're even able to see the cell structure on the individual strands of feather. Incredible! As I was going through my scanning of the feathers, which I've cut out from ready-made shuttles, you could also see the glue and string that had tied the shuttle together. We'll be looking at the glue and string in a minute, but it's also pretty impressive that there's so much detail coming out from the microscope scans. Next up from the feathers is the thread and glue. In terms of the thread, the only difference I can tell from the low end to the high end shuttles are the thickness of the threads used. Additionally, it looks like the nicer shuttles are all machine sewn, while the low end shuttle looked like it was hand tied. The thread looks to be of a similar type of thread, but all mid-range to high-end shuttles have threads glued to provide structural stiffness, whilst the super low-end shuttle isn't even glued. My shuttle expert tells me glue is the secret sauce to shuttle making. In his opinion, if everything is equal, it's the glue that's a superstar and the ingredient that makes a difference. Apparently, it's a complete science to determine what glue is used, and each manufacturer has the proprietary secret glue mix for their shuttles. And I've also been told that the glue used for shuttles designated for different regions around the world differ in its properties. For example, shuttles destined for humid areas all year round have slightly less moisture content, and in comparison, shuttles destined for the European markets have a glue blend that is slightly higher in moisture concentration, as European conditions are drier, especially in winter, compared to, say, Southeast Asia. Additionally, manufacturers like RSL do try and keep their shuttles as fresh as possible by adding a little bit of moisture into their tubes of shuttles before sealing them for transportation. Depending on where you are, transportation from the factory factory to the final retail location may take months. Hence, it is important to keep the freshly produced shuttles in the best condition possible for as long as possible. Obviously, I've also asked what would be the optimum shelf life for a shuttle that's been produced, and the answer I got is around 24 months. Obviously, this doesn't mean that shuttles which are over 2 years old are not fit to play with anymore. Speak to the retailers you buy your shuttles from and they'll be able to tell you how fresh the shuttles are. Generally, I believe we're still in quite a big shuttle shortage all around the world, depending on what brand you normally play with. I don't think many retailers are storing their shuttles long on the shelf. One key thing about making sure shuttles are performing at their best is to store them correctly. I was told that clubs in Denmark are storing their shuttles in temperature and humidity controlled enclosures, and they were able to save quite a significant amount on their annual shuttle spend, as the shuttles were performing at their best all the time. RSL also said that they've tested at the Badminton Europe's Center of Excellence previously for their shuttles and found the optimum humidity for the shuttles to be at 86% relative humidity. Temperature wise, around 18 to 21 degrees Celsius would be best, but obviously if you're in a warmer or colder climates, just make sure your shuttles are not experiencing big temperature fluctuations. Finally, if you do find your shuttles a little bit too dry or brittle, you can simply re-steam them, which I previously showed in the video here. I'll link it in the description below. Be careful not to overdo it though. So I hope you've learned something new about the shuttles that we play with, and put any of the questions you have in the comment section and I'll try and answer them as many as I can. Hopefully I'll be able to visit a shuttle factory soon and continue to part 2 of this deep dive. I'll see you in the next one.